Well, folks, here we are again for the weekly forecast. Of course, during this past week, the big news was the upper air low that moved from the Pacific Northwest out into the Central Plains, resulting in widespread precipitation across the northern plains here in Nebraska. We had precipitation from Friday night into Saturday across the western one-third of the state with some isolated thunderstorm activity in the Panhandle. But more importantly, more concentrated precipitation broke out on Sunday across eastern Nebraska, with the heaviest precipitation down in the southeastern corner of the state where totals approached 3 inches. But broad-based, we were anywhere from 1/4 of an inch up to 3 inches, depending on where you were in the eastern part of the state. Another upper air low is poised to come out into our region as we get into the midweek period. But before we get to the main forecast, let's take a look at sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific, because we have been talking off and on about La Nina conditions potentially developing this fall. So here's your area where we're starting to see an expansion of the cooler than normal sea surface temperatures. Now, according to the Climate Prediction Center, they've actually backed off on their La Nina forecast because they have not seen this area sufficiently cool in order to meet the criteria that they deem is necessary to move us into a La Nina. However, the Australians note basically the difference in the pressures between Darwin and Australia, and that oscillation index is basically pointing to La Nina thresholds. So in this next month, we're either going to be right from the Climate Prediction Center standpoint or the Australian standpoint, and somebody's going to be wrong. It's just we're going to have to watch to see how this thing plays out. So currently what we have going on, though, is an upper air trough that's poised to come into the United States over the next couple days. And in advance of it, we have a surface low that will start to generate itself or start to significantly strengthen as we go forward in time. So as we go into tomorrow, what we're going to see is these low pressure systems start to consolidate. The trough itself starts to move in and will start to push its way toward the plains region. So as we go into Monday, we start to see these lows forming at the surface and starting to ride toward the north. The energy coming around this jet starts to push northward, and this low really starts to wind up as we get into the 4th. And that system will start to continue to move on by the time we get to the 5th, up into the upper Midwest, and will start to weaken, bringing in some cool air on the back side of it. And as we get into the later part of the week, this system starts to open up, and we start to see high pressure systems building into the region. So by Thursday, of course, we're on the back side of this low, and more importantly, we have a ridging pattern building in as we get to the end of next week, bringing in nice conditions for next weekend. More importantly, we look at precipitation. You will notice that as we get into this weekend, we're looking at dry precipitation chances. But more importantly, as we get to the eastern seaboard, that's where almost all of the moisture is being associated with a trough that is across the eastern United States, and it will also merge up with a system that's moving out of Cuba, Hurricane Matthew, that will move up the eastern seaboard. But for us, dry weekend, we start to see a little bit of precipitation residuals here as we get into Monday. But more importantly, as we get into the Tuesday time frame, you're going to start to see an expansion of precipitation with some reds and yellows here indicating anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches of moisture possible along the front range. And as this moves in during the midweek period, we are looking at the potential for better than 1 inch of moisture across central Nebraska, and this system weakens as it moves toward the northeast. So it does look like we have a decent chance for precipitation across portions of east or central Nebraska that desperately need the moisture. But more importantly, we start to see a drying pattern as we move into next week. So as we take this farther from next Thursday to the following Tuesday, we look to see the temperatures and warmer temperatures moving toward the east, cooler to our west. And as we look at precipitation, above normal precipitation for the northern plains. I think this is overdone for Nebraska as that trough looks to stay to the north of us and move toward the Great Lakes region.